Good evening. I'm Les Linebarger, Executive Director of Communications for Nacogdoches ISD. This is a regular monthly meeting of the NISD Board of Trustees, conducted remotely using the Zoom app because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Today's open session is being recorded and will be shared afterwards on the district's YouTube account. After starting the meeting, trustees will move into a closed session in another Zoom meeting. This meeting will return no earlier than 6 p.m. Once the open session resumes, there will be a public hearing on the budget and tax rate. This will be separate from the normal public comment section of the meeting. Anyone wishing to comment during the hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate can use the chat feature in the Zoom app to request an opportunity to speak. Please use your full name in the request and ask to comment on the 2020-21 budget. Those wishing to comment on the budget will be taken in order of their request, and that will take place after we return at 6 p.m. I will now turn this over to NISD Board President Pam Fitch. Ms. Fitch?
Thank you, Mr. Linebarger. Good evening, everyone. I hereby call this regular meeting of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees by video conference to order. A quorum of the following board members is present. Please indicate by saying aye when I call your name, or here. President Pam Fitch, myself, I'm here. Vice President James Montoya.
Here.
Secretary Mindy Winslow.
Here.
Leah Beth Apt.
Here.
The Reverend James Irvin, have you joined us? Okay. Hopefully, Reverend Irvin will join us shortly. Dr. Tyrell Roman.
Here.
Mr. Farshid Nirman.
Here.
We thank you all for being here tonight. On March the 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephone or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance with those suspended rules, we hereby certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. We are meeting by use of Zoom software, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during public comment will be provided the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practical. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be made available to the public at a later date. Zoom software allows for people to view and interact. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigated these unprecedented conditions. If you have any questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. The board will now conduct an executive closed session to discuss the items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act and as allowed by Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 5:06 p.m. See you guys in a few minutes.
Bye.
Les, can you tell me if we've got everybody back?
Let me check here.
All right, thank you, sir.
Let's see. No, we don't have everyone back yet.
All right, give me the heads up when we're ready.
I think we're waiting on the Reverend.
I'm here.
Oh, is it? Are you here?
Yes, sir.
All
All
right.
right. I believe everyone's here.
All right. The board is now reconvening into open session at 6:02 p.m. We will now proceed with the public meeting regarding the proposed 2020-2021 budget and proposed tax rate. After the presentation, viewers of this meeting will have an opportunity for input and comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to the proposed budget and tax rate presentation. Anyone wishing to comment on the proposed budget and tax rate can use the chat feature in the Zoom app to request an opportunity to speak. Use your full name in the request and ask to comment on the 2020-2021 budget. Those wishing to comment on the budget will be taken in order of their request. Ms. Barbrick, if you will begin the public meeting.
Good evening, President Fitch, board members, Superintendent Dr. Trujillo. I would like to share my screen with you, which is a PowerPoint.
And this is the PowerPoint in the board book, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
All right, so this is the public hearing for the 2021 proposed budget and proposed tax rate. So some budget requirements that we have are that we must hold a public meeting. The budget must be adopted by June 30th, and the district must adopt a tax rate by September 30th or 60 days after receiving the certified appraisal roll. So one of the changes that we have this year are due to House Bill 3, TEA is now calculating the district's maximum compressed tax rate. This is known as the MCR. They have until August 5th to do this. If we wish to appeal that calculation, we then have 10 calendar days to appeal that rate. So the assumptions we used for developing the budget this year, we used a refined ADA of 5,675, which is 56 lower than our ADA at the end of the fourth 6 weeks. That was when we went out at spring break and didn't come back. Staffing was based on an enrollment of 6,292 students, which is 106 higher than our snapshot, which is held on the last Friday of October. The M&O tax rate that we used was $1.0547. Again, that is an estimate. TEA will calculate that. Debt service tax rate used was 0.245 or 24.5 cents. This is our third year since, this will be our third year since the bond was passed, and this will be our first year to raise our tax rate. A 2% flat increase was given to most staff members, with the exception of a few staff members that were identified at being paid at significantly less than market rate. So now I'd like to get into the budget. The proposed budget, we are projecting local revenues to be 1.1 million less than current year. And this is primarily due to tax collections, which will be just a little under $1 million less. State revenue will increase by just a little over 900,000. And federal revenues are decreasing by 183,000 for a total decrease of $436,000. The following slides show the budget for functions 11 through 33. Those functions are labeled for the purpose of the expenditure. And as you can see, all but guidance and counseling is an increase. The guidance and counseling budget, there's just extra revenue in it this year. So it's not that we are necessarily reducing anything. They just have an abundance of the budget in there this year. This next slide shows functions 34 through 61. Here you'll see the majority of them have a decrease over current year, and that is due to mostly to one-time expenditures such as purchases of vehicles and equipment. And this slide is showing functions 71 through 99. Here you'll see a significant decrease in function 81, which is facilities and acquisition and construction. Function 81 always ends the year much larger than it starts due to ongoing projects that fall into fund balance, and then we pull them back out after the year starts. So down at the bottom, we see a balanced budget, revenues equal expenditures, and we have an ending fund balance of $27.9 million. Here's a summary of what I just presented. Revenues are projected to be at 59.2 million, expenditures at 59.2 million, ending fund balance at 27.9 million. Our board policy requires 3 months of expenditures, and 3 months of expenditures, an estimate is that we would need $14.8 million, and we have more than enough. So due to the uncertainties of next year, what we are facing, this budget has been built very conservatively. I normally build them conservatively, but this has been even more so. 79% of our budget is in salaries and benefits, and this is up from 72%, and that is mainly due to function 81. When you have over $3 million in Function 81, that will skew that number. And again, the M&O tax rate that was used to build the budget is not necessarily what will be adopted. So looking at spending by object, our budget is primarily taken up in payroll, 79%. The next largest area is in contracted services at 10%. And payroll is primarily made up of instruction, which is where all our teachers and our classroom paraprofessionals lie. Next, I'd like to go over the student nutrition budget. Here we are looking at a decline in revenues of about $108,000. But for the most part, it looks very similar to the current year. Expenditures, again, have a decline. And we have a balanced budget again with an ending fund balance of $1.1 million. I'm sorry, we do not have, I misspoke there. Okay. Our expenditures, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong column. I'm looking at the increase and the decrease. So yes, revenues equal expenditures. Debt service was built with a tax rate of 24.5 cents. This is an increase of 8.25 cents. And again, the first 2 years of our bond, we had no increase. This is our first year to increase. We are looking at an increase in revenues of 1.5 million, and this is due to the increase in the tax rate. Our expenditures are just slightly higher, $311,000 higher. And we've been, the last 2 years, we've used other sources available to pay down that debt. And we have a decrease in our fund balance, which is planned. And we are ending with a $4.8 million fund balance. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Barbrick. I will remind anyone wishing to comment on the proposed budget and tax rate to use the chat feature in the Zoom app to request an opportunity to speak. Speakers will be given 3 minutes time. Use your full name in the request and ask to comment on the 2021 budget. Mr. Lineberger, I'm going to turn it over to you for anyone that has signed up.
Yes, ma'am. Michelle Peck has signed up requesting to speak during the public hearing.
All right. Mr. Michael Martin, are you with us to keep time?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here, President Fitch.
All right. Mrs. Peck, you've got the floor.
Good evening, board and Superintendent Trujillo. It's so nice to speak with you this evening. I hope you can hear me. I had a question about questions, so I'm just going to go and ask my questions and then yield the time, hopefully, for some answers down the line.
Ms. Peck, I'm afraid at this time this is for comment only. There are no questions during the public hearing.
Okay, well, I'd like to leave some questions for the board to consider before you vote on the budget later on during the meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Leaving the numbers out of the budget workshop on June 2nd seemed needlessly exclusive, so I was encouraged to see Ms. Barbrick sharing screens during Monday's budget discussion. Because preliminary budgets were not shared publicly, Monday was the first opportunity we had to review the data. While board members might have had weeks to study the data presented at tonight's budget hearing, we're left with just a few days and no opportunity to ask questions once that information has been published to the public. There's no other means to raise questions. I think you discussed this in the workshop on Monday, but I do want to know why our staffing isn't based more closely on our WADA, especially when Ms. Barbrick said special populations, which I presume need more supports, continue to rise. I'm curious about the proposed substitute teacher pay rate for the upcoming school year. I've noticed in years past that some people listed as substitute teachers make far more than published pay rates. Why would there be discrepancies in this salary line for substitutes? During Monday's meeting, President Fitch asked about the total admin salaries since some admin roles are listed in different headings. I was curious whether Ms. Barbrick added up all of the DSC jobs, and if so, if she had that information available for the board and the public in terms of a percentage of total payroll. Instruction has a pretty broad definition in the function codes, and in past budgets, people in administrative positions had some or part of their salary in instruction. For example, a technology director might have fallen into that line. Do some administrative positions continue to draw salaries from the instruction line? I'm encouraged that we're adding more social workers to the roster. The caseload per social worker was impossible to juggle considering the needs in our district, and I look forward to hearing more. Thanks for all the work you do for our community.
Thank you, Mrs. Peck. We appreciate that. Mr. Lineberger, do we have anyone else that has asked to speak?
No, ma'am. No one else is asked to speak.
Thank you. We will now close the public meeting. All right, that will take us to our public comment section of the meeting. Those wishing to address the board during public comment should have emailed a request to the district by 4 p.m. today. This procedure is included and on the meeting notice. We do have one request to speak today. Ms. Michelle Peck will be speaking to us on agenda items 6E and 7A. The time limit for comments is 3 minutes. Mr. Michael Martin will keep time for us. And Ms. Peck, are you ready?
I am ready again. Good evening,
All
President Fitch, board, and welcome to Trustee Apt and Superintendent Dr. Trujillo. The board received an exciting report from Linda Autry on Monday. I want to commend her for work on the CCR project with SFA. It would be so nice to see how this effort will help students pass standardized tests and pre-complete entry-level classes. I also expect it will build confidence in students by giving them access to post-secondary options that may have otherwise been considered off the table. When working to get my child signed up for testing to qualify for dual credit in the midst of a pandemic, I hit wall after wall after wall. If I wasn't able to provide the right device, internet access, or spend money for online proctoring, I was told my child couldn't enroll in these programs. I was also reminded how much tests like the TSI inspire anxiety in kids. If we lose students or their parents in this first round of testing, students may not be motivated to move on to an SAT or ACT and could check post-secondary education off their options list. Once this new program launches for seniors, it would be great to expand it to include juniors, and the extra support and hopefully success their junior year could give these students the summer between junior and senior year to explore options post-graduation. Please consider how difficult it is, just for a minute, for a parent to step up to the podium at a public meeting. Think about the people who were never called to speak because they incorrectly filled out a form. Remember all of those people who've been cut off or interrupted at the podium. Now add the barrier of connecting to the meeting remotely and signing up early. You know, while this mom of two students has the means to jump through all of the hoops while accessing all of the rules, policies, and restrictions available in my first language, think about how this information is presented to people in our community who speak languages other than English. I'm broadcasting live from the beautiful Clint Dempsey Soccer Complex because I can't access these meetings from my home. Then consider what rights are made available to citizens through state law and how that law has been reinterpreted by the board. Consider comments of current board members who have said the district should eliminate public comment. Citizens have too many negative things to say. Some people talk too long. Trustees have more information than the public and they should get to make all the decisions. And this is our meeting and we have work that we need to get done. These statements discourage rather than encourage public participation in public education. Last September, I asked then board members to reread HB 2840. What is written at the state level, I hoped would supersede attempts to disrupt legal public comment and discourage communication. I applaud Trustee Apt for questioning board policies related to House Bill 2840 and ask you all to consider a change in board policies that aligns with the spirit of the law because board business is public business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Peck. We appreciate your participation tonight. All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Unless removed from the consent agenda, all items listed will be acted on with one motion. If there is a board member who wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda separately, please indicate the agenda letter and it will be set aside for further discussion and a separate vote. Do any board members have anything they would like to pull? All right, hearing none, I'll open the floor for a motion.
President Fitch, I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Reverend Irvin. Do we have a second on that motion?
Ms. Fitch, this is Rashid Neilman. I second that.
Thank you, Mr. Nearmond. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, and unless I'm corrected, sounds like that passed unanimously. We'll now move on to our action agenda, which is the first reading of revised local policy BED, board meetings, public participation. Mr. Martin.
Good evening, President Fitch, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Going back to Monday's agenda review, looking at the revised version of BED local, the policy that is before you, the draft policy before you, allows both type of agenda and non-agenda comments to be presented at regular meetings, and only agenda comments at special meetings, since they are usually topic specific. The majority of districts we've researched use this attached policy that you all, that the administration has recommended. Again, administration is recommending that the board approve the first reading of BED local, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. I know, board, we had some discussion on this policy on Monday, so I want to be sure to allow for plenty of time for any discussion. The recommended version, as shown in our board packet, allows for public comment at the beginning of the meeting, or I say the beginning, it would be at it's all together, lumped together.
Mm-hmm.
And just want to make sure, you know, how we feel about that. And of course, I'll entertain any motions.
I would like to just make a comment. First of all, I really appreciate the discussion we had Monday. I heard from every one of you, and it was very helpful to me. And I don't know about you, but then I got some input from the public, which was also very helpful. And I felt like that all of that discussion was showing that the impression I'm getting is that this board wants to hear from the public, and that you want to hear from them in an orderly way so that, you know, it just doesn't become tedious. And we are more concerned with the public being transparent and the public feeling free to express themselves than we are that we're, you know, keeping the law. I don't think we would need this law to have this. I would like to share, though, something that I heard from, is the same thing I heard from two different people, and I think you'll like it because it agrees with you and not me from what I was saying Monday. I had two different families say that in the past, when public comment was put at the end, later in the meeting, because of different reasons, they wanted to address the board, but they had no childcare and they had their entire family at a meeting, and a long meeting, they had to leave and they didn't have a chance to address it. And so I thought, well, that was something that I hadn't even considered. So I promise that if we have all comments at the beginning, I will take diligent notes so that I will be able to put it in context later at the item. And then we are addressing not only that we want to be open and give everyone an opportunity to express themselves and address us, but we are being orderly and convenient for them. And I think that's an important thing to consider. So I like the wording that Mr. Martin has amended this to be.
Thank you, Mrs. Apt. Any other comments or questions or discussion? Not
President
hearing
Fitch,
any. Yes, sir.
James Irvin here. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the first reading from Mr. Michael Martin.
Thank you, Reverend Irvin. We've got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I will second. James
See, that
Montoya.
was Mr. Montoya. Thank you.
Hmm?
All right. I want to, if you guys will indulge me on important votes, particularly on an action item, since we are doing this by video conference, I would like to kind of do a roll call vote so we can make sure that everyone is heard. Vice President James Montoya, how do you vote?
Yes.
Secretary Mindy Winslow.
Yes.
Miss Leah Beth Apt.
Yes.
The Reverend James Irvin.
Yes.
Dr. Tyrell Groman.
Yes.
Mr. Farshid Naramond.
Yes.
And please let the record show that President Pam Fitch votes in favor as well. Thank you all. All right, from that, we'll move to our final item on the agenda tonight, which is adjournment, and I will open the floor for a motion.
This is Mindy, and I move that we adjourn.
Thank you,
I almost
Mrs.
can't even
Winslow.
say it.
And do we have a second?
I'll second the motion. This is James Irvin.
Thank you, Reverend. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And Ms.
Thank
Fitch and Dr. Trujillo.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good weekend, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Coach.
Good evening.